It was a humid summer morning when I discovered that Karen, the audacious HOA president, had flooded my yard to build a pond, completely disregarding property boundaries, local ordinances, and my ownership rights. The water had turned my manicured landscape into a soggy swamp, threatening my garden, driveway, and the structural foundation of my cabin. I knew immediately that this was another attempt by Karen to assert imagined authority. But this time her interference had crossed a dangerous line. I went outside and saw the extent of the damage. Water pooled in every low area, mud and debris covered walkways, and several young trees were partially submerged. Her plan to create a community pond on my property had failed spectacularly, but the consequences were serious. Not only was my property damaged, but the water intrusion posed environmental and safety risks. I realized that immediate action was required, not just to mitigate the damage, but also to prevent her from attempting similar stunts in the future. I began by contacting the local water authority and reporting the unauthorized manipulation of water flow. Simultaneously, I reviewed my own property maps, water rights, and easements. As it turned out, I had full legal authority over all water access points on my land. Karen, acting without consent, had effectively violated multiple regulations, including trespassing, property damage, and potential environmental law. Next, I deployed a series of flood control measures. Pumps were placed strategically to redirect the excess water away from sensitive areas, and temporary barriers were installed to prevent further inundation. My engineers and landscapers assessed the situation, confirming that while the flooding had caused damage, it could be remediated if properly managed. Meanwhile, I documented every detail: photographs, videos, timestamps, and even GPS data showing where the water had originated. As anticipated, Karen tried to defend her actions when I confronted her. She claimed that the HOA had community rights to modify land and create water features. I calmly explained, backed by legal documentation, that her claims were completely false. I had jurisdiction over all water use on my property, and any attempt to manipulate or control it without permission was illegal. I also contacted the county water inspector's office, revealing the full scope of Karen's interference. They were shocked at the audacity of the act and immediately issued a cease and desist order against the HOA. Karen had unwittingly triggered official oversight, and her attempt at intimidation had backfired spectacularly. With legal and regulatory support secured, I oversaw the restoration of my property. Flooded areas were drained, young trees were stabilized, and soil erosion was addressed. Protective measures, including reinforced barriers and improved drainage, were put in place to prevent any similar incidents in the future. Karen's actions did not go without consequences. The HOA was now on formal notice, and any future interference would result in immediate civil and criminal action. Neighbors became aware of her repeated overreach and began documenting their own property lines and boundaries to protect against similar harassment. Karen, who had sought to manipulate her HOA title to assert control, had instead drawn scrutiny and legal exposure. In the weeks that followed, I maintained constant monitoring of all water points and property boundaries. Surveillance cameras and smart sensors were installed, ensuring that no one could tamper with the property again without being immediately detected. Karen's credibility and influence within the HOA and community plummeted. As word spread about the failed pond fiasco and the swift, law-backed response that neutralized it. By the end of summer, my yard was fully restored, the pond was drained, and all trees and plants were healthy again. The incident served as a clear reminder: property rights are absolute when enforced with preparation, legal authority, and decisive action. Karen's arrogance had been met with consequences she could not overcome, and my family's property was safer than ever. The lesson was clear to all: interference without legal authority leads to accountability, and entitlement will never override preparation, law, and vigilance. Karen had been thoroughly humbled, and my property remained secure, functional, and peaceful.